In the sport of track and field, one of the most potent and dangerous tools to own in your running arsenal is a strong finishing kick. This ability to rapidly accelerate away from your running peers is arguably the most important feature to own if you're looking to win big races. And over the more than 100-year history of athletics, we have seen some true speedsters with this ability. There was Sebastian Coe from Great Britain, who famously was able to go from cruising to downright sprinting over the final 100. There was Kenenisa Bekele from Ethiopia, who had the ability to surge past his rivals over the final 400 in quite devastating ways. There was also Bernard Lagat, who closed his final 100 like drag races various times to take big wins. And a few other notable names include Hicham El Guerrouj, there was Robbie Andrews, Jordy Beamish, Dave Waddle, Mirit Yifter, Haile Gebrselassie, Mo Farah, and also Jim Ryan, among many others. If you've ever had the opportunity to see these athletes compete throwing down these kind of kicks, then you'll know that they're basically sprinters disguised as distance runners. But with this year's track and field season now complete, we have a brand new season of quick finishes to evaluate. And upon taking a closer look, we found what just might be the single fastest finish in all of running history. And it came from one runner with very humble beginnings. In the 2024 Olympic Games in the men's 1500, we saw a huge upset as Cole Hocker from the United States took the win in a brand new Olympic record of 3 minutes 27.65 seconds. Funnily enough, this is the exact time to the 100th as the World Championship record of Hicham El Guerrouj, so in some ways this time is destined for greatness. This win came as a huge surprise to many, as Jakob Ingebrigtsen and Josh Kerr were slated as the two big headliners for this 1500. But with a massive surge on the inside lane, Hocker took the win over everyone else in this field, and Hocker left the Paris Games as a legend. Now, Hocker finished this final 100 meters in approximately 13 seconds flat, which is certainly very fast for a 1500, and considering that this race was fast enough to break the Olympic record, it made his finish all the more iconic on this day. For many, this was their pick as the best race of the 2024 Paris Olympics, and it's hard to deny given the talent, the drama, the storyline, and ultimately the surprise ending from this competition. And after this monumental 1500 gold, many had Hocker as their pick for the 1500-meter champion in this year's World Championships. This middle distance selection made logical sense, as he had proven himself as a global champion just 1 year earlier. However, this was not set to happen, as Hocker was disqualified in the semi-final for jostling another athlete, meaning he impeded that athlete's progression to qualify into the next round. This certainly took many by surprise, and despite the appeals from the United States and the outcry from many around the world, Hocker was not allowed to compete in the 1500 final. This was a huge disappointment for the defending Olympic champion. However, there was a silver lining to this DQ, and that's that he would now be able to compete in the 5000 with much fresher legs than if he were to run in that 1500 final. As the 1500 came to an end and the 5000 final had finally arrived, Hocker was once again poised to use his kick to his advantage. And despite only being ranked 26th in the world moving into this final, Hocker incredibly came out on top. And the way that he made this gold medal happen was nothing short of historic. For this 5,000-meter championship, Hocker threw down a final mile of 4 minutes and 1 second. He achieved a final 800 meters in 1 minute and 54 seconds. He ran his final 400 in 52.62 seconds. He ran his final 200 in 25.5. And the cherry on top of this kicker's domination was the fact that his final 100 meters was achieved in 12.49 seconds, which actually made him the only athlete in this field to dip under 13 for the final 100. This more than half of a second gap was so big that it honestly got me pondering, was this actually the fastest 5,000-meter close where an athlete goes under 13 minutes as the end result? I mean, even if the race was much slower and the athletes were primed for such a close, running a 12:49 for the final 100 is still some pretty amazing speed. But the reality is that a sub-13 puts most athletes right at the very end of their energy, making such a close nearly impossible at sub-13 minute pace. This idea as to whether or not Cole just ran the fastest close in sub-13 history put me on a wild chase throughout running history. In terms of calculating such closes in 5,000 meter running, this would mean that potentially we would have to analyze more than 500 individual races where an athlete broke 13 minutes for the 5,000. Also, and crucially, most races do not track 100-meter split times, so this task really seemed almost impossible. However, one key place to start was with races that do track such closes, because for these competitions, one key race that first came to my mind was the 2008 Olympic 5,000 final, where Kenenisa Bekele outkicked Eliud Kipchoge over the final lap in Beijing. Now, to this day, this is actually still the Olympic record at 12:57, and for his final 400, he closed in approximately 53.87, so compared to Hocker's 52.62, this falls more than a second shy of Hocker's close, and for the final 100 here, Bekele actually jogged a little bit, as he was clearly in the lead, so his final 100 was nowhere near 12.49. If we go back to the 2003 World Champs in Paris, France, we can see another historic close, as Eliud Kipchoge took a huge win over Bekele and Hicham El Guerrouj in an epic duel to the tape. And amazingly, Kipchoge's time here of 12:52.79 is actually still the World Championship record, so even though Kipchoge is known for his endurance, he certainly had crazy speed when he was a teenager. Now for this final 400, Kipchoge closed in approximately 53 seconds flat, and with the final 400 meters in around 13.2, this is crazy fast, but it's still nowhere near what Hocker achieved. At this point, I had to stop and think about how I was going to do this, because in terms of finding race splits from anywhere before 2010, it was basically an impossible task to find anything substantial. There was also the idea that we could calculate what these athletes ran with editing techniques, and there are many people with this ability, but in terms of finding a quicker and more realistic solution, I decided to look into any moments in 2025 where an athlete either broke 53 for the final 400 or even broke 13 for their final 100 in a sub-13 5K. I thought that I would find at least one performance that did this, but believe it or not, I found nothing. In fact, the closest finish to Hocker so far that I've been able to find in 2025 was from the men's 5,000 in the Monaco Diamond League meeting, where both Jimmy Gressier and Birhanu Belu ran a 12:53, and they closed their final 100 in right around 13 seconds. But what's important to note here is that this lightning finish is still more than half of a second slower than Hocker's 12:49, and in terms of their final 400s, Gressier ran a 57.6, and Belu ran a 58.1, so their final 400s were still significantly slower than Cole Hocker. I have scanned various datasets that included all sub-13 performances in 5,000 history. I looked at some of the fastest closers of all time, including Mukhtar Edris, Bernard Lagat, Jakob Ingebrigtsen, Bekele, Gebrselassie, El Guerrouj, and many, many others. And I did not find a single performance with the final 100 under 13 seconds while they still finished in under 13 minutes. There could be some performance out there that I overlooked. Maybe there was an obscure 5,000 that does not include official results somewhere online that you could time. But even with the chance standing that someone else ran faster, I'm fairly confident that Cole Hocker just ran the fastest final 200 and 100 in 5,000 history while maintaining a sub-13-minute result. Clearly, Hocker was ready to make some crazy history in this year's World Champs. There is a possibility he could have pulled off that double had he not been DQ'd, because his finishing speed is next level. But with this 1500 in mind, Hocker has joined an extremely exclusive club of athletes that have won both the 5,000 and the 1500 in a global final. Note, this is not the double that he pulled off in one season, just someone that's won both events in a global final and various world championships. He joins Bernard Lagat, Paavo Nurmi, Hicham El Guerrouj, and also Jakob Ingebrigtsen. There have only been 5 people to win the 15 and the 5,000 in a global final meaning that Hocker is officially joining some of the most exclusive and talented athletes of all time. And considering that he ran a 7:23 for the indoor 3000 this season, Hocker very well could be the athlete to look for in the next Olympic cycle in both the 5000 and the 1500. Because when you look at his finishing speed, he's forming himself into kind of a Yaka-Binga-Brixen hybrid, except for Hocker, his kick is clearly faster. And now I want to actually put out a bounty for all of you. If you can find any performance under 13 minutes with a final 100 meters faster than 12.49, I'll say that I was wrong. And if you do find that, make sure to leave a comment down below with that information, because I am very excited to see if this is in fact the fastest close of all time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time.